do her best to keep herself alive. I wasn't going to opt out, Bonnie. I wouldn't do that to Joe and Jane. I was just trying to be an understanding mother. I know you can't do everything. Well, I don't really know what a ghost can or can't do, but you seem to have some limits. I'll keep going. As long as she could. Her heart was beating so hard that it hurt. She felt sick to her stomach. She could hear Doane cursing behind her. Farther behind than he had been before. Was he faltering? Yes. He was shouting at her, each word broken and harsh.
Don't think you're going to get away. These are my mountains. Kevin and I spent months out here when he was a boy. He particularly liked to kill the deer. How do you think he qualified to be in the Special Forces? I taught him to be a hunter.
And had he taught him to hunt down those little girls and kill them?
Do you hear me? I'm going back to the house and get my equipment and my gun. I'll hunt you down like Kevin and I did the deer. I just hope that hypothermia doesn't get you before I do. It gets cold in these mountains at night.
She knew it was true, but it was hard to believe when her entire body was hot and perspiring from exertion.
I can hear every move you make in that brush. Do you know how easy you're going to be to stalk?
She was pulling more away from him with every second. Close him out. She was winning.
And then we'll go get Kevin and take him to that butcher who murdered him. I'll let Xander see how it feels when I kill you in front of him. There's no greater agony than a father feels at the death of a child.
More madness. Lee Xander, the hired assassin Doane was sure had murdered his son, was not her father. How could he be? Eve's father had disappeared long before she was born, and her mother was never even sure of his identity. This particular insanity Doane had thrown at her when he'd been enraged after she had tossed Kevin's reconstruction off the cliff to distract him. He had thought it would hurt her in some way to know she was a killer's daughter and that she was to pay for Doane's son's death. It was just one more sign that Doane's cold-blooded, calculated pursuit and abduction of her was completely bizarre and totally without reason. Forget that nonsense. She was not the child of a murderer who was probably more deadly and ruthless than Doane. It was all part of Doane's wild hallucinations. She just had to concentrate on getting out of these mountains or contacting someone to help her.
Do you know how many people get lost in these mountains?
Doane's shout sounded still farther away.
Some don't survive the bitter cold and the animals and the mudslides. You might be glad to come back to me after a night or two.
Not bloody likely.
Do you think your Joe Quinn or Jane MacGuire will be able to locate you out here? You could be out here a week, and no one would catch sight of you. You'd have had a better chance staying at the house. I'm the only one who knows you're here and how to find you. And I will find you, Eve.
Keep running. He might be trying to fool her into thinking he'd temporarily stopped the hunt. Don't trust his words. It was pitch dark now. She couldn't see anything but the shrubs directly in front of her. This was too dangerous. She'd be lucky if she didn't tumble off the mountain. She stopped and tried to hear something besides the pounding of her heart. No sound. Doane? She stood there, listening. No rustle of brush, no harsh sound of his breathing in the stillness. Safe? Good God, no. There was no way she was safe. But maybe she'd have a brief respite from the fear that had been with her since she'd been taken from everything she knew that was safe and good. Joe, Jane, the cottage on the lake where they'd lived so many years. She could still hear nothing but the flap of an occasional bird's wings and the wilderness night sounds. But they weren't the same sounds as the one she heard in the forest on the lake. This was wild country. Keep moving. Put distance between herself and the place where she'd last seen Doane, providing that she didn't move in circles. She knew a little about the basics of surviving in a forest, but she wasn't an ex-SEAL.